Okay, brief talk on 2016 Super Sentai Zyuohger. It's cool that there's only one human and it's red, and he can henshin into a lion or a gorilla. I'm wondering if he's doing this because he's the only human on the team, since that's the only footage I've seen. And it would make sense because of the Masked Rider, one rider, multiple formula. But we'll see later on in the series if that's true. It's cool that we went back to the Deca Geki novelty of using plastic animal masks for characters. They may even use Geki animal spirits, which would be pretty cool. I'm still hoping for a Masked Rider Ranger, maybe two, albeit red seems to be one anyway. This was a surprising and welcome reveal, pretty cool. People watching in the show without noticing the spoilers will enjoy it too. Also, my gosh, Kuroi, Zyuohger, and Kuroi Ninja look the same. She was great, but why milk a non-popular series? According to the Wikipedia, though, it's not the same actress, which is weird. Alright, comment below what you think. Very curious. Not much to say, but a lot of anticipation. It's the Anniversary series. Hopefully it'll be really cool, like Zyuohger or Book Intro, where there'll be a lot of merch and a lot of cameos and a lot of cool stuff going on. Enjoy. Super Sentai 2016-17 Zyuohger has a really cool gimmick. Starting from the animal Sentai, starting with Sun Vulcan and Choju Sentai Live Man. It's pretty cool. Zyuohger even takes homage from the eagle, shark, and lion theme, just like Hurricane did, homaging them, and it's a great legacy. It was a great story after all. Echo Larg enjoyed that story too. I'm also not sure if they're going to start with two later like Live Man and Hurricane did, or if they're going to join, late, have them join later like Live Man and Hurricane did, opposed to starting them together like they normally do. There's probably other Sentai that did that too, but that was the one with actual animals in it. When I heard Zyuohger was going to be inspired by Live Man, I thought it was going to be really cool. And as a Geki Ranger thing, and there's so much they can do with it. The animal motif's been done actually not as many times as I thought it was. They used it for Gal Ranger. They used dinosaurs a couple times. Ginga Man had light constellation themed mechas, I guess, but even though they're sentient. So don't remember what else. I'll probably write it in the comments. Anyway, the Live Man inspired Nimpu Sentai Hurricane had two bugs/beetles in the form of the Zyuohgers. I think it would have been more interesting if they had not told us who the other two Super Sentai Senshi were in the beginning, so we can possibly speculate that they would have been Kamen Riders or something. Yes, Kamen Riders in the Super Sentai show, that would have been really cool. It's an anniversary show after all, gotta show off the powers. Originally, the idea behind the Zyuohgers were that they were going to be, or whatever they were called at the time, they were going to be bug-inspired. And I was hoping they were going to be Zyuohgers, except with Kamen Riders instead of Super Sentai member keys or whatever. The show has so many ideas, already using the animal spirits ideas from Geki Ranger, which is pretty cool. Another animal theme show that I forgot to mention. It's pretty creative what they can do with animals. Oh, Changeman was another one. That was pretty cool. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Toys and a lot of stuff to buy. Hope. It's going to be a good show. I don't think Toei's pretty smart. They're not going to ruin the anniversary show after. They're not going to order an anniversary show. It's going to be really cool. And we're all going to enjoy. It's going to be a lot more fun than Zyuohger, and I'm going to mention why later. Speaking of which, it would also be cooler if they start off later off with Heisei era, post including Ryuki Kamen Rider themes, such as animals, dragons in Ryuki, and other animals vampires in Kiva, and Oni from Hibiki, among other things. Oh, I forgot to mention O's too. That was pretty cool. O's was basically a Zyuohger. It would be really cool if he showed up, or like an equivalent show up. Pokemon Pearl, Diamond, Platinum equivalent of O's spiritual successor showed up. That'd be pretty cool. This is gonna be a great show. Can't wait to enjoy it. Even spiritual successors would be pretty cool since Bokenger was such a success. Homaging the monsters based off of previous mechs. I think that's finally it. Pretty good. The first episode of Zyuohger was a good episode. The story was accessible and well written. It re-established norms that since been lost since Tokimei Sentai Go Buster. The intro was that there were 80 million species of animals in the world, but only 1.3 or so million, making you wonder about the science. And of course they talk about humanoid animals with technology. Granted, this is about not being exposed to things and seeing new stuff in the show. After watching the previews, I sort of forgot that the animal masks were on the humans the whole time, prior to the end of the episode. The characters were well established. Lion is the loud, enthusiastic one. Elephant's Elephant doesn't trust Zyuohger. Could be interesting if it's an anti-human racist thing, but probably won't be. Shame because of the dynamic. Zyuohger is basically a tour guide but athletic. The guy who dresses up as an animal seems like an interesting person in the beginning. Could be good for comic relief. The kid who admires Zyuohger could be interesting. I think it's basically going back to a back to basics approach, introduced to the Dungeons and Dragons elements of the weapons that the characters can use against enemies. So like I'm hoping all these characters will each be a V3. Going back to this, I think that people are going to be disappointed that this is basically not a Zyuohger anniversary. It's going to be a lot slower paced, more subtle. There are homages to Live Man Bokenger, Gao Ranger, Geki Ranger, and other things. Other Sentai shows. The feud between the coins and the cubes is interesting. They're basically greed, the bad guys. The mechs seem creative, albeit it seems to be the only one. The only thing they can do is spin around one cube. I'm also disappointed they went back to classic cell phones as opposed to Tokyo 6's iPhone, albeit they're futuristic technology phones. There's also some sort of tail fetish going on, and I'm going to leave on that note. Zyuohger Episode 2 begins with Tusk, Zyuo Elephant, not trusting Zyuohger before walking away. It establishes him as the skeptic trope of Zyuohgers. As a skeptic, though, I don't understand why Tusk would believe Yamato's story, although maybe he's just lying. He does prove himself in the fight, though he did that last time too. Then again, Uncle doesn't believe Yamato's story, although Tusk doesn't know this. Fight-wise, his feet are strong and he has a sensitive nose. I don't know if that goes with his character, but it's interesting. Maybe give it a couple more episodes. Zyuohger likes fruit drinks. The character revealed to be Zyuo Uncle is my favorite. The comedic timing is way better than Zyuo Shark Dex. And the fact that he makes animal-like objects is very interesting and adds to his character. Oh boy, a human shark turning into a shark, wanting to swim in a fountain, showing her fin. I think you've been watching too much Sharknado, Japan. I think you underestimated. Maybe they just watched that Amazon clip in Mass Rider and thought that's what we need in Kamen Rider and Japanese tokusatsu. Oh boy. It's very Z-movie-ish. It can really deter people from a show, especially Americans. But I don't think Juddlin is going to adapt that anyway. As much as the scene where they go to the mall is a bit annoying, I wonder whether they explore the characters well, which I underestimated with Go Buster and Geki Ranger. Though being annoying and making that inaccessible and accessible doesn't work compared to making it critically acclaimed and making it accessible as well. On to part 2. Brief summary of the dark themes, Dobutsu Sentai Zyuohger, Episode 2. Using the Zyumen or anyone as a slave or a pet. Zyuo Lion is basically a Japanese battle Kenya. A Japanese person basically in blackface, sort of. Also, one of them is fed to try and reason with them, to sort of domesticate them, which I think is interesting. I don't know if they'll go into it, and I don't know who the writer is or who the crew is, but it's something that could be explored, which could be interesting in later episodes. There's no hints in episode 1, it's too early to notice, but we'll see. It's interesting because despite it being a light-themed Sentai, there's some dark stuff to it. You have the aliens invading the Zyumen and the humans, and one of the humans treats the Zyumen sort of as a lesser being, sort of. Even if it was for comedic effect, to sort of brush it off. I think it's interesting. Hopefully it'll be explored later. They did before with Yasuko Kabayashi in Reisha Sentai Tokyuger. We'll see if any of that's explored in this Sentai. Also, it would be cool if the animal train Tokyuger showed up in Dobutsu Sentai Zyuohger, but I'll explore that in another video. I keep coming up with more stuff to say, sorry. It's even more interesting that Zero Ego puts a leash on the other Zyuohgers, because another eagle, Zyumen, gave him powers, making it even more ironic. That shows you that you can never know, like, giving powers to someone would end up with a good result or not, which is always a risk. And that's dark. I like that. The powers and special effects for the text are memorable. I think they're trying to pull a Hurricaneer, and while not on that level, are enjoyable. The monster is pretty much irrelevant for a storyline that's, while not terrible, I don't really care for. It's cool one of the enemies is named Naria, trying to not say Narnia, which is what it references. Zyuo King is definitely parallel to how the bad dudes use greed, with Zyuo King consisting of 4 animals. Also, the aliens referred to their fight as a game, channeling that of Battle Royale. They're both having fun. It's like, hard to say, like, use coins to buy stuff, possibly like games. Also, I'll get into something else later. Like, it's basically like, when they resurrect the enemies, it's basically like giving an extra life in arcade. I think the combination of 5C3 for all you stat fans out there with the combinations is going to hold up for a while. Maybe they'll introduce another Zyumen as well. Also, Zyuo might stay on the top, even though they might be saving a time when he doesn't lead Zyuo King for a while. I'm predicting now maybe in the second half they'll introduce the Anniversary Sentient writers, but we'll see. Next episode there'll be Amu Yamato shipping. At least it's not Shark Decks. Also, let's not forget the tail fetishes. Needs more Blues Brothers. Come on, let's go and shake that tail fetish. The Amu Yamato relationship established this episode, while neither groundbreaking or critically acclaimed, does exposition not accessible and fan-friendly since Ghostbuster. Amu, White Tiger, goes around shopping before encountering Yamato, Red Eagle. She convinces him she found it was just a cake, stuff in a fashion place, etc. They find each other after Yamato is seen trying to give out letters about the Champion Cube in the mall. There is a bit of a plot hole that is addressed about why the 3 other Zyuohgers didn't just call Amu when in trouble. The bus is a good scene for the Zooland thing, because the dynamic of all the shaking. The characters are credible, which is the most important. Mario, exclamation point, and fun. This is the more organized version of my review of Zyuohger episode 4 that I posted on Toku Heroes. The enemies were very interesting, despite not really being a feature of the show. It's really interesting. They don't do that much, yet so much time ends up being wasted. Something is wrong with the efficiency of the show. The pirate battler monster dude sort of reminds me of the Japanese original for Captain Immunity. There's a bit of a gladiator and sports commentary in addition to and Justify the Means, not to mention the pyramidal structure of society. The amusement of the king seems to be a big feature of the show. Cubor's name sounds epic for this show, being that there's championship cubes or symbols or whatever. The actors don't have much to do, but they were really memorable. On to the main characters. I like how Sella is basically a new Yasumo, which is basically the new Baron in turn. It's a great use of a rival, although color isn't a great aesthetic thing. It's interesting that they've used it to symbolize something. I don't recall seeing the people in the nuts fight, so them fighting was sort of downplayed. And it's a shame that it's probably going to be in a director's cut or something, unless I missed something. Me and LB Crimson have debated on the meaning of the fight between Leo and Sella, and I still think Sella is interesting in that she could be a Justify the Means person like Yasumo or Baron. Because in my interpretation, I still think Sella wants to fight to the death against Leo to prove that she's better. It's sort of that twisted mindset that I sort of get. Maybe it's because I've watched too many samurai films or whatever, but, you know, like even a Pokemon, you know, being your rival, beat up the other Pokemon, knock it out, you know, that kind of stuff. Sella's sort of like Trinity Quan or Blue Swallow, not to mention Pokken Pink. Does that make Leo Pokken Blue? Tusk's nose is now a thing, even though, like, he was... It's weird what they're doing with the characters. Tusk is, like, the serious anti-red character, while Blue is this anti-yellow character. Yet he has this sort of down... If I hadn't gotten out of, like, things being over-accessible, being accessible thing, or whatever you call it, I'd probably be bothered by this, but, the nose thing... It was done well this episode, I think, compared to like the chicken thing or the nunchaku thing in previous episodes. Like in Geki Ranger and other Super Sentai. His name is John Cena. He's a bad, bad lamb. I've ruined this review and I might as well finish it. 6 mechs, combinations of 3 or 4, interesting. Maybe even the originals can be auxiliaries. That gorilla tease will be interesting for the Zero World release. I'm assuming it's just a Geki Ranger homage with the gorilla and the red Senshi combining powers, but still making me curious regardless of how a bit of it was leaked already. Here's some random notes on Dobutsu Sentai Zyuohger. I mentioned the previous video about how Zyuohger made references to 2001: A Space Odyssey, but there's also a brief moment of a reference to The Shining in episode 5 of Zyuohger. There's a reference to the axe that Mr. Torrance uses in The Shining. The axe that Mr. Torrance uses in The Shining is representative of the horrors of the U.S. settlers onto America, an invasion of natural life and a lifestyle less technological prior to the invasion of European settlers into America. Zyuohger does this in a bit of a campy way, much like a children's story. It's very interesting considering of the themes of racism in the 5th episode of Zyuohger. How should the reflection of one cop, not to mention one town, reflect of an entire species? Or Zyuohger, Zyuohger, Yamato. There's no direct correlation, despite the fact that we all think in terms of race and other stuff. Not to mention there's a third invasion party with basically the Greed. I forget what their names were. the villains of that series. And it's interesting how that can be used. Should the two sides combine, the friend of the enemy, the enemy of the enemy is the friend or something? I'm pretty sure that, but you know what I mean. It puts this interesting perspective on things. Like, how would you have reacted in a situation like this? And although I haven't fully used words to figure this out, I feel like definitely a lot of people are thinking about where this will go in the series. Anniversary Sentai Zyuohger, Episode 6, Analysis. The idea of giving up one's power and make someone else live as a result of that, make them stronger, is like that of the Lion King and the Circle of Life. We eat meat and plants after killing them so that we may live. This is really dark, and they don't really make too many jokes during this episode. Well, besides not knowing where the Zyuohgers are, leaving Uncle out while they try to figure out what happened to Larry. It's also a bit of a consumerist thing. It's about how, like, you sell something for a profit, and then you buy something for a good deal, so you lower their price, so that you can sell for a higher profit, so you can increase your price, so that you make the maximum amount of profit, so that you may survive off the profit. Larry may die so that humans, Zumans, and Yamato survive. The idea of Zuman power from cubes is interesting. Look at those shades. No one died. Humans are the ones who succeeded, and it's done at the expense of Larry, who no one seems to care about at the end of the episode, who's basically written off. I really like the dark side of the show, and it's really showing with these really good lessons of the day and subtext. Something we didn't have since Zyuohger. Dobotsu Sentai Zyuohger Episode 8, aka when you mosh pit to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers music. The monster uses music control, music brain control, music mind control, and as a result, a friend of the episode for Leo gets injured, and it's a music injury. It's actually probably the most realistic depiction of the music industry in a Super Sentai episode. In the end, his friend becomes a music producer, like any musician from age. It's a very good allegory with the musical profession. I do wonder if it's him becoming less artful and more business opinionated, but that's your opinion, man. It's cool how they use all the mech stuff. 1, 2, 3 symbol or visual was really cool, and using 2 mechs instead of 1. It makes me wonder if they're gonna employ more Zyuohgers like they did with Zyuohger. What are your thoughts on the episode? Sorry about it being late. I didn't know it released yesterday. Sorry. This is a really complicated episode. Good. Major spoilers. The episode had elements of Groundhog's Day, making me sort of hope that this new mech of this episode would be a groundhog. Then again, the time traveling mechanics would make this show where the hero was really cheap, albeit that would have been a really cool shakeup. There's a really scary shot of an evil monkey this episode. Also, time is expressed by Amu saying, "Early? How about lunch?" Hanyader's nightmare perfume is apparently the source of all the mishaps this episode. Also to note is that the bad guys are about games. Good games have you restart possibly from a save to replay the game. It's revealed they're stuck in a recurring dream, so of course you have to wonder about this trope till possibly the end of the series. When do they wake up? Do they ever win versus the bad guys? There could be something even more surrealistic about playing videos and video games, whereas a real war happens in the real world. Zyuohger is in a TV show, another false reality. Again, this is really high concept stuff, and my episode of the first 10, if the next one doesn't beat this one.